How has gang phenomenon affected society's youth? One of the main reasons I chose this topic is because I'm a bailiff and I'm mainly in juvenile courtrooms and have seen the effects of this. So I enjoyed doing the research for this project. And let's take a look at different things that I've found. One of the biggest things is exposure to drugs and alcohol. Drug trafficking has increased dramatically recently. The damage to the developing brain of youths with alcohol and drugs. The biggest thing is your brain stops developing around 25, and drugs and alcohol have a big effect on underage brain development. Another behavior that we see is the sexualization of women and underage children. These kids start hanging out with these groups of men that are in gangs and older boys, and they abuse women. They talk down about women to younger children, and when they're hanging out in their different cliques and groups. As they get older, they have a lack of education. Most gang members drop out of school around middle school. Some of them make it to lower high school, but what we see is a lot of them drop out, and most never graduate high school. And that makes it much more difficult to leave the gang later on in life, and also to lead a productive life with a career that has a decent income and maybe also benefits and things like that. It's just makes it out of reach for them as they age. Lack of work skills and experience due to lack of education and vocational training. They lack the skills to succeed. So as non-gang members go on to their first career and start building a foundation for later on in life, these guys are usually hanging out, goofing off, kind of just not doing much with their life, and then also they're not in a entry-level jobs. So, and then they're also not doing anything with their education. So they're starting to fall behind as youth their age are starting to pass them by. We also see that they slowly start to remove themselves from their families. They're influenced by the gang. It's much higher. They often go from home. They're gone from home, hanging out with the gang. So if they have a parent that is a good influence, like a mom that works, they tend to not be around to see her example. And then the physical violence that these kids go through together, and even as they say, they get beaten in to the gang, and then after they're beaten in, they kind of have a party with the same people that just beat them up, which I find kind of interesting, but it makes a bond even stronger as they continue to hang out together and go through what most people would consider hard times together, and it forms a tighter bond, almost like a family, and it replaces their real family. And unfortunately, even when one family member is trying to set a good example, as they continue with the gang, incarceration or imprisonment is more likely. In fact, gang members are almost 3 times more likely to be incarcerated and incarceration makes it obviously even harder as they go on in life. Now, when they're incarcerated, whether it be at a JAC center or even prison or jail, they're missing out on schooling, they're missing out on life experience, they're missing out on the beginnings of their careers, and they're just setting themselves up for failure and setting themselves up to be more and more behind in life as they're incarcerated instead of pursuing their goals. Unfortunately, we're seeing this more and more. We've lost 2 of our kids this year out of my courtroom alone to death. Most gang members own illegal firearms. They usually steal them out of cars when they go what they call pulling handles. Gang members are 60 times more likely to be killed than a normal citizen. Also, their innocent family members are more likely to be killed by accident in a drive-by shooting, maybe even on purpose, unfortunately, but that happens quite often. Gang members obviously commit petty crimes and also violent crimes. Gang members are 3 times more likely to commit different crimes, and then gang members can contribute to about 58% of the crimes in a certain gang area, some as high as 70% on some statistics that I've looked up, and that's for gang areas. So anywhere where the gang has their turf, they commit a majority of all crimes in that area. Again, that's where their turf is at, and that's where they're selling drugs and different things like that. And the community, unfortunately, that try to live in that area have to put up with them. Continuing with the petty crimes and violent crimes, they impact the economy as a whole. We have to have more police officers in those areas. We have to have more research and trying to figure out ways to stop the growth of drug sales and different things that these gangs are involved in. And then also another interesting impact that a lot of people don't think about, but non-gang children, they're afraid to go outside and they're afraid to play like your traditional neighborhood kid would do, and that's because they see the violence outside their own front doors, and they just say the ones that want to be good and want to be contributing members of society pretty much have to stay in their house, unfortunately, because they see the violence outside and they see the different gangs that want to try to recruit them or harass them until they decide they either want to join or they'll be constantly harassed. The mental health aspect of being a gang member, they're concerned for their own safety constantly, whether they're just walking down the street or actually in the middle of a crime. They're concerned about their safety, whether they're going to be shot by a fellow gang member or stopped in the middle of one of their crimes. They're usually sad about their fellow gang members being killed or family members being killed. Their lives are of constant worry about all these things. They're constantly nervous. They usually have anger issues, if not at the beginning of being in these gangs. They will develop severe anger issues, and the fact that they're desensitized to violence. So after so long of being around this violence, it just becomes a way of life for a lot of youth. And youth's developing brains, it's hard for them to look in the future to see what their consequences to their actions are. We constantly try to talk to them as they turn 18. We tell them, things are going to change. If you keep committing these crimes, you're going to end up going to prison for a long period of time. Usually, right off the bat, if they've accumulated so many points, they're looking anywhere from 5 to 10 years in prison for doing, unfortunately, what they've been doing for years as a minor, where they'll get, programs or continued probation. Now, they turn 18 and they do the same thing they've been doing for months, for years, for most of their life, and there's no more program for them. There's no more, there's no more short continued probation or short little Jack Center lockup. There's going to be prison for them, usually 5 years right off the bat. I've seen upwards to 10 years right off the bat for doing the same exact crimes that they've been doing for, anywhere from since they were 12 years old all the way up till 18. And we try to instill that into them and tell them that that's what's going to be coming for them if they don't stop what they're doing. And sometimes they do, and a lot of time, unfortunately, for our juveniles that come back over and over, repeat offenders, they tend to unfortunately not listen, and they go the route that we try to prevent them from going. But unfortunately, they're going to have to learn the hard way and make their own life choices. But they do definitely set themselves back, and they set society back. When we fail our youth, we fail our society and our country. That's what we try to instill in them, and hopefully we get across to some of them. But I enjoyed this project, and I appreciate your listening, and have a good night.